Mary, a 38-year-old single mother, has worked tirelessly for 12 years at a large corporation where she plays housekeeper. This morning, the clock read 5:30 a.m., when the familiar sound of Luke's, her 10-year-old son's, cough woke her from her slumber. Mary quickly rose, her messy brown hair framing her tired but alert face. The small, minimalist apartment echoed only the outline of the next room's plan. Mary's bare feet quietly padded across the cold floor as she ran into Luke's room. She found him sitting on the bed, struggling to breathe. Without hesitation, Mary retrieved the inhaler from the bedside and helped him use it. Cradling Luke in her arms, Mary whispered words of comfort. "Take deep breaths, baby. I'm here, it'll be okay." "You're my little warrior." Her voice was easy to suppress, trying to suppress the hysteria that was overwhelming. After a few tense minutes, Luke's breathing began to steady. Mary felt the relaxation spread throughout her body. But worry still shone in her eyes as she saw her son looking fragile in his superhero costume, a far cry from the energetic boy he had been before, when Luke's asthma had gotten worse. Mary gently brushed a strand of hair from Luke's sweaty face, her heart swelling with love and fear. "How are you feeling, honey?" Mary asked softly. Luke, still panting but with a small smile, replied, "Okay, Mom." "Sorry to wake you up again." His voice was amused. Mary hugged Luke tightly, trying to keep the tears from falling. "Don't ever apologize for that, honey. I'm always here to take care of you." After taking care of her son, Mary began her morning, preparing for another day at work at the company. As she made breakfast, she worried about Luke's health and the mounting medical bills. The aroma of toast and fried eggs filled the small apartment, temporarily masking the smell of Luke's medicine. Mary called her son out for breakfast, watching him walk slowly to the table. "Come on, soldier, you need to eat to be strong. Finish this plate like a superhero." Mary shocked. She placed a full plate of food in front of Luke. Luke looked at the recipe without much interest, but started eating to make his mother happy. "Mommy, do you think I can play soccer again?" he asked between bites. Mary's heart sank at Luke's innocent question. She sat next to him, holding Luke's small hand. "Of course, honey. We'll continue to follow the doctor's instructions and soon you'll be running around like this." Mary tried to sound more automatic than she really felt. When she looked at the clock, Mary realized it was almost time to go to work. She carried her bag and uniform, looking back at her son sitting alone at the dining table. Her fear of flooding combined with her determination to reduce her division. "I will find a way to fix everything, whatever it takes. I will make sure my son has the life he deserves." In the hallway of the building, Mary met Mrs. Carmen, her elderly neighbor, who cared for Luke during the day. Mrs. Carmen, with her silver hair and gentle smile, greeted Mary with a warm hug. "How is he today? Is the cough better? I hope he slept well." Mary sighed, running her fingers through her hair. "His cough came back this morning, but he's better now. I don't know how to thank you for all you've done," Mary replied, her voice cracking with emotion. Mrs. Carmen took Mary's hand, conveying comfort without words. "You don't need to thank me. Luke is like a grandson to me. Go to work with a peace of mind. I will take good care of him." Mary nodded, grateful, and headed up the stairs. As she went downstairs, a thought flashed through her mind. Today is the day of the big meeting at the company. Maybe if I do everything perfectly, they will receive my power, and I will get a much-needed raise for Luke's treatment. Hours later, the smell of fresh coffee wafted through the air as Mary, a 38-year-old mother, headed to the coffee shop. Her brown hair was tied back in a bun, and her tired but visible hands held a silver tray. As she walked to the door, Mary took a deep breath and adjusted her neat dress. Mary was deeply proud of the products and services that had kept her in this job for more than a decade. As she prepared to step in, she thought, another day, another chance to make a difference, even if no one noticed. These executives may not know my name, but I know my job is important. When she opened the door, Mary was greeted by a jumble of nervous voices. The room was filled with businessmen and entrepreneurs who were concentrating on the CEO, Mr. Thompson, a middle-aged man in a perfect suit with a confident appearance, presenting on employee satisfaction. Mary began serving coffee silently, moving gracefully between the coffee tables. As she served, she could not hear Mr. Thompson's presentation on employee satisfaction. Mary's eyebrows furrowed as she noticed something was wrong. He matched the numbers presented. That's not true. I know most of the employees, and the situation is not as you describe it. Mary's heart raced as she debated whether to speak up. Years of experience had taught her to keep quiet, but part of her rebelled at the idea of silence in the face of misinformation. She looked around the room, noticing the attentive faces of the shareholders, who rarely acknowledged her presence. Mary took a deep breath, gathering her courage. If I don't speak up now, who will speak for the voiceless? She thought to herself, feeling the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. With trembling hands, Mary approached Mr. Thompson, who was in the middle of a speech about high employee satisfaction. She cleared her throat gently, gaining his attention and the attention of the room. "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson, let me intervene." Mary had always been proud of her position at Technova. During her 12 years of hard work, she had seen the company grow and prosper. But today, at the important shareholders' meeting, everything began to change. The large conference room on the top floor of the modern building, where the bright lights reflected off the glass, created a solemn atmosphere. Shareholders sat around a long conference table, their eyes glued to the projection screen as the CEO, Mr. Thompson, presented this quarter's financial report. The figure he presented of employee satisfaction at 85% had everyone satisfied. However, Mary could not ignore the signs of instability she had observed in recent months. With a firm voice she interrupted, "But I believe there is an error in the numbers you are presenting." A moment of silence appeared, and all eyes turned to Mary. The shareholders looked at her with fear and surprise. Mr. Thompson, the CEO, was momentarily shocked by the sudden interruption but quickly regained his composure. "Mary, I appreciate your second concern, but I am certain that these data are accurate, as they are compiled by our HR department." His tone was thick with contempt and exasperation. Mary, however, did not back down. With a courage she had never known she had, she replied, "Sir, I have worked here for 12 years, I know almost every employee, and I can assure you that the satisfaction level is not at 85%. In fact, many are considering leaving the company due to the working conditions." A surprised murmur went up in the conference room. The shareholders exchanged curious glances and began whispering to each other. Mary noticed the mix of emotions on everyone's faces: surprise, respect, and even a little admiration. A middle-aged shareholder named Amelia leaned forward, looking concerned. "Mr. Thompson, I think we should listen to what Mary is saying. After all, she seems to have first-hand knowledge of the situation." Mr. Thompson's face turned red, a vein bulging on his forehead. He looked at Mary with anger and shame. In that moment, time seemed to stop in the conference room. Mary felt her heart pounding in her chest, but she stood firm, keeping her eyes on the CEO. Finally, Mr. Thompson said in a tense and controlled voice, "Mary, I appreciate your contribution. However, this is a private meeting, and you have clearly overstepped the bounds of your duties. Please leave immediately." As Mary turned to leave, she felt a mixture of emotions: fear of what her boldness might get her into, but also pride for speaking up. As she approached the door, she heard Amelia say, "Mr. Thompson, I think we've made a mistake by ignoring the voices of our employees for so long. Maybe it's time we reevaluate our methods." Mary closed the door behind her, her heart still pounding. She wondered what she had done and whether it was worth risking everything for what she believed was right. The once familiar hallway was now strange and hostile, leaving Mary feeling more alone than ever. She walked toward her work area, her legs shaking with each step. The weight of today's actions was becoming more apparent. Colleagues walked past, some looking at her with curiosity, while others avoided eye contact. Rumors were spreading quickly through the company. Mary could feel the buzz of whispered conversations around her. As she reached her small service area, Mary leaned against the sink and took a deep breath. I hope this doesn't cost me my job. I need to support Luke. I have so many medical bills to pay. I know I did the right thing, but now I wonder what the consequences of my actions will be. Before she could calm down, Mary heard her name called. It was the HR manager, Mr. Lee, with a serious expression on his face. Mary, come to my office right away. A chill ran down Mary's spine. She nodded silently and followed Mr. Lee down the hallway, feeling the eyes of her colleagues burning into her back. In her mind, Mary told herself, keep your head up, you did nothing wrong, you just told the truth. The walk to the HR office seemed to take forever. Each step echoed like a premonition of what was to come. As he entered, Mr. Lee closed the door behind him. The office was cold and impersonal, with a large oak desk dominating the space. Sit down, Mary, he gestured to the chair opposite. Mary sat down, feeling small and vulnerable. The overwhelming silence made her feel suffocated. All she could hear was the ticking of the wall clock, each passing second adding to her anxiety. Finally, Mr. Lee said in a controlled but disappointed voice, Mary, I trust you understand why you are here. Your behavior in today's meeting was completely unacceptable. Minutes later, Mary dragged herself down the stairs of the building, each step heavier than the last. The envelope containing her dismissal letter burned in her pocket, a constant reminder of the day she had just experienced. When she reached the door of the apartment, Mary hesitated, her hand relaxing as she turned the key. Luke's familiar panting greeted her as she entered, making her heart ache. Luca, Mary called out, trying to keep her voice steady. Mrs. Judith, the elderly neighbor who cared for Luke, appeared in the kitchen doorway with a worried expression. Mary, your son had a little bout of thirst not long ago. I tried to calm him down, but his medicine ran out, she explained with concern. Mary felt heavy. She steamed, dropped her bag, and ran to her son's room, finding Luke sitting on the bed, still struggling to breathe. Mommy's home too early, Sonny gasped. A wave of anger and hysteria washed over Mary. How could I forget to buy more medicine? What kind of mother am I? I can't take care of my own child, she immediately challenged herself. With trembling hands, Mary helped Luke sit up straight, massaging in gentle circles. Breathe with me, honey. Remember what the doctor said? Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, she instructed, demonstrating slow, deep breaths. Luke nodded, trying to follow her instructions. Grandma Judith was in the bedroom, holding a glass of water. I brought it for you, she said softly. Mary thanked her and helped Luke take small sips of water, gradually increasing his breathing to become more regular, his panting to lessen. Mary continued to tell a gentle story, interspersing random stories to keep Luke's mind off his difficulty breathing. When he finally seemed to calm down, Mary kissed his fur, feeling the bad breath under his lips. You're so brave, my little warrior, she whispered. Luke looked up at his mother, eyes wide with fear. Mom, why are you home so early today, he asked, his voice still a little windy. Mary felt her neck tighten. I have to work, but everything happens so fast today. She thought, not knowing how to say it without worrying him, but also not being able to hide the truth. She smiled, stroking Luke's hair. I had an unusual day at work today, but don't worry about that now. I need you to rest. Mary helped her son lie down, adjusting the pillow so he was slightly tilted, making it easier to breathe. Judith, sensing the tension in the air, intervened gently. Luke, let me tell you a story while I rest. I've had a long day, she suggested. Mary looked at her neighbor with gratitude, tears streaming down her cheeks. Thank you, Judith. I don't know what I would do without you. You're such an angel in our lives, she whispered, gently hugging her shoulder before leaving the room. In the hallway, Mary could hear her voice starting to tell a story, while her mind drifted with worries that gathered like storm clouds. How am I going to pay? What about the rent? God, what am I going to do? Mary headed toward the kitchen, her eyes automatically stopping at the pile of bills on the table. Sighing heavily, she sat down and opened each envelope. Each bill felt like a deep stab to her heart: the house money, the electric bill with the warning of the power being turned off, the credit card statement with the ever-increasing amount. How did I let it get to this point? Why is drinking so good? I have to earn more money. I have to do more for my son, she said inwardly, running her hand through her hair. I should have paid more attention, saved more. The guilt and responsibility weighing on her shoulders made it hard to breathe. She read on the refrigerator, where a smiling photo of Luke was held with a motto. The contrast between the carefree smile in the photo and the reality of the real pain. I can't fail. I'll find a new job, I'll find a way, even if I have to work nights, Mary thought determinedly. She reached into her bag, pulled out the envelope containing the dismissal letter, and opened it with shaking hands. Reading through the cold, uncaring words, the letter finally mentioned a small severance pay account. Mary did a quick calculation in her head, trying to figure out how long that would last. Maybe just enough for a few months of medication. Then what do I do next? Just then, Mrs. Judith quietly entered the kitchen. Luke is asleep. You look tired, she announced softly. When she noticed Mary's bored expression, she controlled herself for a moment and then began to tell. Mary told Judith about the meeting, the firing, the overdue bills, and worries about Luke. Mrs. Judith looked after him, her gentle face showing understanding and concern. Naturally, the phone rang, rewarding Mary with her gift. She looked at the clock, seeing that it was past 9 p.m. Who could be calling at this time? Mary naturally got up to answer. "Hello," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Mary, this is Luke's school." The principal's voice sounded strained. "Mary, we need to schedule an emergency meeting to discuss Luke's situation. He's missed several classes due to his asthma, and it's seriously affecting his grades, and there are other issues that need to be addressed." Mary closed her eyes, feeling like the world was spinning around her. "Other issues? What else?" she asked anxiously. "Of course, when can I come to school?" the principal asked. Mary was asked to come to school the next day, and she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. When she hung up the phone, she looked at Judith with concern. "Luke's school wants to have a meeting tomorrow," she announced. Mary explained, her voice shaking. Judith came over and placed a comforting hand on Mary's shoulder. "Honey, I know things seem to be falling apart, but I'm not alone. I will help in any way I can," she said, causing the tears Mary had been holding back to spill over. "Thank you, Judith," she whispered, feeling the warmth of her support. Mary stood silently in the kitchen, feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. She knew she had to be strong for Luke and the others she loved, but it seemed like everything was against her. Judith, with her determination and kindness, became a light in Mary's darkness, reminding her that no matter how difficult life was, she did not have to face it alone. As Mary looked out the window, thinking about the future, she felt a small glimmer of hope. "I will find a way," she told herself, regaining her determination to face the challenges ahead, knowing that she had the support of those around her who loved and cared for her. Mary sat silently in the small kitchen, the only sound being the ticking of the clock and her soft sobs filling the silence. She didn't know what she would do without Judith by her side. The two women stood side by side, sharing their grief without words. After a while, Mary tried to calm herself, wiping away her tears with the palm of her hand and walking to the large window overlooking the city, shimmering with night lights. Outside, life continued without a break, but inside Mary, everything seemed to be falling into chaos. Luke's slightly labored breathing from the bedroom made her unable to shake the feeling of anxiety that filled her. "How am I going to cope with all this?" Mary whispered, her voice barely audible. "I lost my job, the bills keep coming, Luke is sick, and he's in trouble at school." She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened her eyes, her gaze had changed, shining with renewed determination. Turning to Judith, who was still watching her with concern, Mary said in a strong voice, "No matter what happens, I will protect my son." We will find a way, even if it means moving mountains to do it." Judith nodded, giving a small smile of agreement. "And I will be here to help you both, honey. Together, we will get through this." Mary had barely finished speaking when her cell phone rang, causing her to turn around. She looked at the screen, her heart pounding with anxiety at the prospect of more bad news, but instead the name that appeared on the screen belonged to the HR director from her old company. Looking at Judith with a confused look, Mary picked up the phone and answered. The voice on the other end of the line sounded unusually cheerful. "Mary, it's nice to talk to you. I know the situation today is quite complicated, but I really admire your attitude. I've introduced you to a company in the city center. They are looking for someone with your integrity and experience." Mary's heart beat faster, a combination of hope and fear blooming in her heart. "I didn't expect that," she replied in a serious tone. "Thank you." The man continued, "There's just one small thing. They want to interview you immediately. Can you come there now?" Mary looked at her watch, then at Judith and the bedroom door where Luke was lying sick. Her mind was spinning, but the question arose, but what about Luke at school? He's still sick. Judith, sensing Mary's uneasiness, approached and whispered, "Is it possible to give up?" "Don't worry, I'll stay and take care of Luke." Mary hesitated for a moment, then decided, "Okay, I'll go. Can you give me the address?" She quickly wrote down the information on her phone. Mary felt a mixture of gratitude and guilt. Turning to Judith, her eyes were filled with understanding. "Mrs. Judith, I know I'm asking too much, but this is an interview. Can you help?" The old woman interrupted with a caring gesture. "No need to ask. Go get that job. Luke will be well taken care of. Don't worry." Mary hugged Judith quickly, murmuring an emotional thank you before running into the bedroom. She changed as quietly as possible, looking lovingly at Luke, who was sleeping soundly. "Mommy will do this for you, honey. Mommy will fix everything, I promise." With determination, Mary rushed down the stairs of the building, her heart pounding in her chest. The night was cool and the city lights were like beacons of hope. She checked the address again and started walking quickly towards the bus stop. Mary worried, what if I don't get it? Will I be able to pay the bills? What if the interview is difficult? Doubts clung to her, but Mary pushed them away with determination. "No, I need to focus. This might be our only chance." The bus arrived and Mary boarded, choosing a seat near the window. As the bus rolled through the city, she replayed in her mind the possible answers to the interview. "I need to prove that I am capable. I need to show everything I can and that I am a good employee, a dedicated woman." The passengers around her looked at her curiously as she got off the bus in the city center. The city at night was bustling with people rushing about, each with their own mission. Mary checked her watch, realizing she had only 15 minutes to get to the interview location. She sped up, her eyes never leaving the address. Her anxiety grew with each block, but suddenly, as she turned a corner, she almost bumped into someone and quickly backed up. Mary came face to face with a familiar sight: Amelia, the shareholder who had witnessed her dismissal that day, struggling with several bags of groceries while leaning on a cane. Time seemed to stand still as Amelia recognized Mary immediately. "Mary, what are you doing here?" Amelia asked, her voice a mixture of surprise and relief. Mary hesitated, her gaze shifting between Amelia and the watch on her wrist. "Hello, Amelia, what a coincidence to see you here," she replied, trying to smile politely. Amelia tried to step forward but almost lost her balance, her shopping bag swaying dangerously. "Oh, sorry. I think I underestimated my ability to shop with this broken leg," she said, feeling embarrassed. Mary's heart sank. The interview was only a few blocks away, and she had only a few minutes to get there. But how could she leave Amelia in this state? Can I help you with the shopping bag?" Mary asked herself before the answer came naturally. "I can help you with the shopping bag." Amelia looked relieved. "It would be great if it weren't too much trouble." Mary took the heavy bag, feeling both the physical and mental weight of the choice. As they walked along the sidewalk, Amelia started talking Mary. "I want to talk about what happened today at the meeting. I really admire your courage. You showed integrity." Mary felt a lump in her throat, clearly remembering the moment she lost her job. "Thanks, but I don't feel very courageous at the moment," she replied. But Amelia continued, "No, you don't understand. Your actions have opened the eyes of many of us. There will definitely be changes in the company because of your courageous attitude." Time seemed to speed up. Mary's future, her new job opportunity, was only a few blocks away, but was stopped to help Amelia. The irony of the situation did not escape her. "I appreciate your words," Mary began, but hesitated, not knowing how to explain without looking rude. Amelia noticed the uneasiness in Mary's eyes and frowned. "What's wrong, Mary?" She looked worried. Mary took a deep breath, the conflict evident in her eyes. Should she explain that she had lost her job because of her courage and now had an interview, or continue to help Amelia, possibly missing this one chance? The watch on her wrist seemed to remind her with each cruel tick. Mary looked at Amelia, then looked at the road that led to the chance to save her family's future. "What should I do? Help someone in need or run for my own survival?" She thought desperately, the city lights around her blurred like a dream. The noise of traffic mixed with the pounding of her heart. Mary stood on the threshold of a life-changing decision, while time continued to pass without stopping. "I can't abandon someone in need. I'll help Amelia and go to the interview," Mary decided, because it was the right thing to do. As they walked, Mary couldn't stop thinking about the interview she might have missed. "Maybe there's still time," she told herself, trying to convince herself. Amelia noticed Mary's tense expression and broke the silence. "Mary, you look nervous. Is there anything I can do to help?" At the taxi stand, Mary helped Amelia lean against a street lamp and carefully placed her shopping bag beside her. "Actually, Miss Amelia, I'm on my way to a job interview," she said, her voice filled with trembling emotion. Amelia looked at her with surprise and understanding. "An interview? But why aren't you working at the company anymore? What happened after you left the conference room today?" Mary felt a lump in her throat, the tears she had been holding back threatening to fall. "I was fired," Amelia, she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. Amelia was stunned, her face filled with shock and anger. "Fired for telling the truth? That's ridiculous." Mary nodded sadly, her hands shaking as she gripped the shopping bag. "Yes, that's right." Amelia said nothing more, just looked at Mary with eyes filled with surprise and disappointment. "I can't believe this. You did the right thing, but why did you have to suffer like this?" Mary felt her heart shatter. "I don't know what to do, Amelia. I just want to keep my family together." Amelia placed a hand on Mary's shoulder gently. "Don't give up, Mary. Your integrity will be rewarded. I will support you in any way I can." Mary felt the sincerity in Amelia's words. A glimmer of hope flashed in her mind. "Thank you, Amelia. I really need your help." Amelia smiled gently before leaving Mary standing there with her thoughts in turmoil. She felt her heart lighten, knowing that even though the road ahead was difficult, she was not alone in this fight. Mary turned back, looking in the direction of her interview. She realized that even though she had been a little lost, Amelia's help and Judith's determination would be a strong source of motivation for her to continue moving forward. She walked with the belief that everything would be okay, and no matter what obstacles, she would find a way to overcome them to protect her family. Mary was racing against time, looking for any interview opportunity that might solve whatever problem she was facing. However, she was still filled with anxiety about whether she could succeed. Her son Luke needed expensive medication for a severe asthma attack, and his supply was running out. The bills kept coming, leaving Mary feeling desperate. Her words spilled out like a dam finally breaking, and Amelia listened intently, her expression changing from shock to deep sympathy as Mary finished her story. A heavy silence fell over them, broken only by the sound of traffic and the honking of taxis. Amelia gently reached out and touched Mary's arm and said, "Mary, what a brave and honest thing you did today. You don't deserve this." Mary felt a wave of gratitude from those understanding words, but the reality of her situation was still dire. "Thank you, Miss Amelia, but courage and honesty will not pay the bills or buy medicine for my son." At that moment, Mary's phone vibrated in her pocket. She took it out and looked at the time, her heart pounding as she saw the interview time come and go. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the despair and resignation. This is my only chance, she thought, showing defeat in her appearance. Amelia noticed the change in Mary and asked softly, "Interview Mary?" Mary nodded, unable to find the words to express her disappointment. Amelia was silent for a few seconds, seemingly thinking about something, looking out the window to watch the taxis go by. Suddenly, a taxi finally stopped beside them. The driver got out to help Amelia with her bag before getting in. Amelia turned to Mary one last time, handing her a card. "Mary, thank you very much. You sacrificed your interview opportunity to help me. I don't know how to thank you. Know that God always protects good people like you," Amelia said, saying goodbye, and Mary nodded. "You don't have to thank me. I did it from the heart," she whispered. Amelia smiled, squeezed Mary's hand and said, "Promise me that you will continue to be the wonderful person you are now. Go to the interview and don't give up too soon." As the taxi drove away, Mary watched Amelia's car with the card still in her trembling hand. Amelia's encouraging words echoed in her mind. "Don't give up too soon," Mary whispered to herself. "I will try," along with a deep sigh. Determination gradually rose in her eyes. She looked at her watch and made an impulsive decision: run on the busy sidewalk, dodging passersby, not caring about the fatigue on her legs. Her heart pounded, a mixture of hope and fear pushing her every step. "Please don't let me be too late," she repeated like a mantra as she navigated the city streets, panting and sweat beading on her forehead. Mary finally reached the building where the interview was taking place. She paused for a moment, trying to catch her breath and straighten her wrinkled clothes. The image in the glass door made her hesitate. "I look messy and tired. What kind of impression will I make?" she thought. But the image of Luke needing his medicine made her swallow her pride and step into the building. In the elevator, Mary tried to calm her hair and clothes, her stomach churning with anxiety. "It's all up to me now," she whispered to her reflection in the elevator mirror. The elevator doors opened on the 5th floor, and Mary stepped out to find the right interview room. She was met by a stern receptionist who looked at her with disapproval. "How can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice cold as ice. Mary swallowed her tears. "Yes, I'm here for the interview. I know I'm late, but..." The receptionist interrupted. "The interview was an hour ago. We don't like lateness at this company." Mary felt despair rising in her chest. "Please, I've encountered an unexpected situation. If I could just explain." At that moment, the office door opened and a middle-aged man in an impeccable suit stepped out. His face was a mixture of annoyance and curiosity. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking from Mary to the receptionist. The woman immediately replied, "Sir, this is the candidate who didn't arrive on time for the interview. She's asking for a chance to explain." The man turned his attention to Mary, his eyes examining her appraisingly. Mary felt exposed and vulnerable, but she found the strength to say, "Sir, I know I'm late and I apologize, but if you could give me just 5 minutes to explain." Mr. White raised his hand to interrupt her. "Excuse me, miss. I'll wait for you to finish first," he said. Mary quickly replied, "Miss Mary." Mr. White nodded slowly. "Punctuality is one of the most important qualities we look for in our employees. Your lateness not only disrupts our schedule, but also shows a lack of respect for our time." Mary felt her heart sink, knowing full well what was coming. "I'm sorry, Mr. White, but we cannot proceed with your application. I hope you understand." Mary nodded automatically, a sense of defeat weighing heavily on her shoulders. I see, thank you for considering, she whispered, her voice barely audible as she turned away, feeling utterly defeated. As she walked toward the elevator, she heard Mr. White instruct the receptionist to call the next candidate. The elevator doors closed and Mary finally allowed the tears to fall. What am I going to do? How do I tell Luke I failed, she thought desperately outside the building, wandering through the streets that were a whirlwind of anxiety and self-recrimination in her mind. She passed shops and restaurants, the contrast between the bustling city life and her despair becoming almost absurd. Without realizing it, her footsteps led her to a pharmacy. She paused in front of the door, looking at the shelves filled with medicines and health products. The image of Luke suffering from asthma invaded her mind, and she felt a new determination. I can't go home without his medicine, she thought with shaking hands. She opened her purse, counting out the few coins she had left. Mary entered the pharmacy, the cool air from the air conditioning a stark contrast to the heat of the street. She approached the cashier, her voice shaking as she asked for Luke's asthma medicine. As the pharmacist took the medicine, Mary looked around the store, noticing all the items she couldn't afford: bandages, vitamins, even simple cough drops. The pharmacist returned the medicine, announcing the price. Mary felt a pang in her chest as she realized the price would take up all her remaining money, leaving her wondering how she would buy food for herself and Luke. For a moment she hesitated, thinking about the bills she needed to pay and the groceries she needed to buy, but the sight of Luke struggling to breathe dispelled any doubt. This is for my son, she thought, her hands empty and her prospects for employment empty. The future seemed more uncertain than ever as she walked home, the weight of her situation weighing heavily on her shoulders. What am I going to do now? How do I tell Luke that I failed, she asked herself, her mind filled with worry and determination. Mary always believed in her son's abilities, but the fear of the unknown always held her heart. The bustling streets of the big city seemed to mock her situation, where people were rushing against time, each with their own destiny and goals. In that vast sea of people, Mary felt like a small grain of sand, invisible and unimportant. However, the medicine bag she carried always reminded her of her mission, the reason to continue fighting. When Mary arrived home, her hurried footsteps echoed in the corridors of the building as she climbed the stairs one by one. Opening the door, she saw Mrs. Judith standing in the living room with a worried look on her face. "Mary, thank God you came." "Luke is worse, he just had a panic attack and he won't get better without the medicine," Mrs. Judith said in a trembling voice. Mary turned her eyes to the bedroom, where her son lay, breathing hard and fast. Without hesitation, she ran to him, her eyes filled with tears. "Luke, honey, it's me," Mary whispered, holding him in her arms, feeling the fragility of his body. She tried the inhaler she had bought, but the medicine didn't seem to work for such a severe condition. "Judith, I need to take him to the hospital. He won't survive like this," Mary said, quickly grabbing her bag containing Luke's records and inhaler. Mrs. Judith looked at Mary worriedly but nodded quickly. "I'll come with you, Mary. We can't leave him like this," the neighbor said, grabbing Mary's coat to accompany her to the hospital. At the hospital, Mary and Mrs. Judith sat in the waiting room while the doctors tried to stabilize Luke. The atmosphere was tense, the silence between them reflecting their anxiety and fear. "He'll be fine, Mary. He's strong. Remember how he recovered last time." Judith tried to reassure her, but Mary barely heard her. Her mind was on Luke and the fear of losing him. "What if this time is different? He looks so weak. I've never seen him like this," Mary replied, her voice choking. The doctor emerged from the examination room, his eyes serious, and walked towards them. "I'm Luke's doctor." "Are you his mother?" Mary the doctor asked, and Mary nodded, worried at the expression on the doctor's face. "Your son is stable but still fragile. He needs to be admitted for observation. We almost lost him," the doctor explained. Mary felt relieved but also more worried. "Thank you, doctor. But what now? Will he recover?" she asked, her eyes brimming with tears as she looked at Judith. Judith put her hand on Mary's shoulder. "Mary, I always believe in you. We will find a way together. The sky is still blue. Luke is as strong as you." Mary sighed. "I know, Judith, but sometimes I feel so tired, like things will never get better," she confessed, feeling the pressure of responsibility. At that moment, Mary's phone rang. She looked at the screen and saw that it was Amelia, the director of the company where she had worked for many years. "Mary, it's very important. I need you to come to the company to discuss an important matter. Please come as soon as possible," Amelia said. Mary sighed, feeling the pressure increase again. "Amelia, my son is in the hospital. He almost died today." "I can't leave," she replied, her voice full of pain. Judith, who had been listening to the conversation, gently interrupted Mary. "The doctor is taking care of him. Maybe this is important to you and him. Don't miss this opportunity." Mary looked at Judith, feeling uneasy. "I don't know, Judith. If he needs me," she hesitated. "I'll be here, you know. I'll do anything for him." "Go, Mary. You need to work this out," Judith insisted, squeezing Mary's hand. With a heavy heart, Mary agreed to attend the meeting, knowing that Judith was right. She returned to Luke's room, where he was sleeping peacefully after the emergency, and gently kissed his forehead. "I'll be back soon, honey. It's all for you," she whispered, and left the hospital, leaving Luke in Judith's care. A few minutes later, Mary entered the conference room with a racing heart, still shaken from the chaotic day and constantly worrying about Luke. She didn't know what to expect, but her gut told her that this meeting would change her life. Amelia stood at the front, leaning on her crutch, surrounded by other employees and shareholders. The silence was almost ecstatic, all eyes on Mary. Amelia stood up with difficulty, adjusting her crutch and taking a deep breath before saying, "Mary, what happened to you was an injustice, and we are here today to right that wrong." Her strong but inviting voice made Mary feel her heart pounding harder. She knew being fired was hard, but she never thought the company would consider it a mistake. "When you spoke up in that meeting, your intention was to speak the truth, and it is unfair that you lost your job because of your courage." Amelia said, "The world needs people like you, Mary. People who dare to speak up, who fight for what they believe in." Mary looked at Amelia with surprise, her words seeming unreal. Each sentence Amelia said made her think more about the future, about the bills that were piling up and the fear of losing her child because of not being able to afford medical care. Now Amelia was saying that it was all a mistake. "I only did what I thought was right," Mary replied, her voice low as if she was afraid to speak out loud. Amelia smiled at her, her eyes filled with admiration. "And that shows everyone that you have something very special. Today, we are here to fix what happened." Amelia continued, "From now on, you will no longer be an employee, but will take a leadership position in the company." Amelia's voice was so convincing that it shocked Mary. "Leader?" she stuttered, unable to believe what was happening. She never imagined she would be given a position of power, especially after all she had been through. Amelia nodded firmly. "Yes, leader. You have proven yourself capable of handling difficult situations, understanding the needs of those around you, and most of all, doing the right thing. The company needs leaders like you, Mary, people who understand people and have compassion." Amelia's words echoed in Mary's mind, hardly believing that after being fired, she would be given such a great opportunity. She thought about Luke lying in the hospital and the future she could build for him. "Thank you, Amelia," Mary said, her voice full of emotion. "I really don't know what to say." Amelia smiled. "There's no need to say anything more, Mary. We've made our decision, and we trust you." While Mary sat silently, the people in the room nodded in agreement with Amelia. Mary felt a glimmer of hope, but also worried about how she would balance her new responsibilities with caring for her son. "I'll do my best," she said, more determined than ever. "Thank you everyone for believing in me and supporting me." When the meeting ended, Mary left the conference room with mixed feelings. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but the support from Amelia and her colleagues gave her a newfound strength. she returned to the hospital, where Luke was still lying in a daze in his hospital bed. Mary sat next to him, holding his hand and smiling. "I'll do everything I can to give us a better future, honey." In that moment, Mary realized that no matter how hard life threw her, love and perseverance would always guide her through any challenge. She is determined to be not only a great mother but also a compassionate and strong leader, not just for herself but for Luke and all those she loves. Mary didn't know what to say. She never thought she would have this opportunity. Finally, Mary managed to respond. Tears welled up in her eyes, a mixture of relief, joy, and disbelief. Amelia smiled warmly. "You deserve it, Mary. You don't have to worry anymore. You're back in the company, and in a position that reflects your true worth," Amelia affirmed. Mary felt a wave of emotions. She was not only rehired but also recognized. After the meeting and thanking Amelia, Mary left the building in a lighter mood, but still worried about her son. When she went back to the hospital, she could only pray for Luke's health and hope that everything would be okay. When she arrived at the hospital, Mary entered Luke's room with pride and hope. Donna and Judith, sitting next to Luke, noticed Mary's unusual gaze. "What happened, Mary? You look different," Judith asked with a curious smile. Mary knelt down by Luke's bed, holding his fragile little hand. "Mommy got her job back, Luke. You have to be healthy now and things will change for us. Everything will be okay." Her voice was choked with emotion, tears of faith streaming down her face. Luke smiled weakly and squeezed her mother's hand. "I know you'll be okay. You're as strong as a superhero." Mary smiled, feeling happiness filling her heart. The hardships she had gone through now had a reason. She not only got her job back but also built a future for herself and Luke. In the following days, Luke quickly recovered from his time in the hospital. Mary thrived in her new leadership position at the company, finally able to provide a more stable and secure life for her son, including paying for medical treatments that made Luke laugh and play like before. Judith is always by Mary's side, providing support and friendship, while Amelia becomes a friend and mentor, always present in the crucial moments. Mary's life is completely transformed, bringing peace and hope for the future. Together, these women form a network of strength and love, proving that with courage, friendship, and perseverance, any obstacle can be overcome.